Welcome back for another book review. We are doing one more of these voiceover editions because that's what I've got time for. I've been getting my office set up. We're almost there. I think this will be the last one of these kinds of videos, but here we are. We are talking about Santa Muerte. This is a book that I read and I was planning to talk about before the day had passed, but here we are. So Santa Muerte is one of those deities, saints, somewhere in between, that is often kind of lumped in with Day of the Dead celebrations, and is like her imagery just naturally fits in with Day of the Dead. And so I was trying to do it right around Samhain. I finished the book on time, I just didn't get around to recording this, so it's a little bit later. But as you can tell from the title, it definitely has that vibe. The skulls and flowers and that imagery, like, it matches really well for that time. That's why I decided to read this book. And honestly, I didn't know a whole lot about this deity, and I was pleasantly surprised. The first thing for this book is that, again, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know who Santa Muerte was. I didn't know anything about, like, cultural context. I kind of vaguely had an idea that it was related to, like, Mexico and just kind of Central America. That was about it. And honestly, this book is like super helpful if you have absolutely no idea who this is. So the book talks about this too, but it goes back and forth between saying it's a deity and a saint. And so I personally like more of the deity aspect, where Santa Muerte is like, and I don't even remotely know how to say the word, so I'm not going to, but there's an ancient Aztec like death deity that Santa Muerte really aligns with. And there's like a theory that she just kind of changed names and, you know, kind of just adjusted from the old Aztec name into Santa Muerte, which is like, I think it was like the Holy Death is what the name translates to in English. But I love this idea. There's like a few different theories, which are all like, in this book, it's so interesting of like how she was like, could also have been like the Grim Reaper, but female from Europe. And that like when the Spanish came over to, again, Central America and like into Mexico, like that deity had just kind of happened. Also, I'm sorry if you hear in the background, Office Cat has decided now to start munching. So if you hear some soft little crunches and tinklings in the background, it's just Office Cat having her little snacky snack. So anyways, back to the point. So there's like this theory that, you know, it was like this Grim Reaper thing, but the Grim Reaper was also like this take on like a Greek deity. Like I think it was one of the fates or something. And like it's so interesting seeing like all of these different possibilities. And then of course there's the take that it is like almost like it is a saint, and it could be like related to like the Virgin Mary. And like I don't know a whole lot about Catholicism. I grew up in Utah. That's not a big thing here. Like I know Mormon culture, and Mormon culture is like super duper not mainstream Christian. It's very different. And so like I don't know a lot about the saints, and you know, I know Catholics are really big into like Mother Mary and their saints and how they practice and things. It's very different, again, from the Mormons than I'm accustomed to. So like reading through this book and like seeing like the saint side of it was like interesting, but like I don't know much about that because I've never been around it. But on that note, while this deity like has the sainthood and like it's kind of assumed, again, Santa Muerte is the Holy Dead, and like there's or Holy Death, and it's very connected to a lot of Catholicism. Like there is a lot with this saint slash deity that like people don't love. So she is, again, somewhere between a saint and a deity. And she is heavily used by the not greatest of societies. It's heavily frowned upon. Her worship is kind of really not appreciated. And like the Catholic Church has actively fought against this particular saint. There's like, I think the book said there was like 1,500 or so saints, which is like insane. And they specifically say no to this one. And the people who do follow her, like, society just, like, at whole actively fights against her. And yet the people who work with her get really good results. Because, like, the people who work with Santa Muerte, and it was mentioned quite a bit in this book, were, like, the people who are in, like, gangs and do drug trafficking and are, like, you know, they're playing on the edges of society and are not following the rules of everyone else. They're kind of doing their own thing. And, like, she doesn't discriminate. So, like, whether you're a cop trying to deal with things or you are the person breaking the law, like, she will side with both of you. And it's just, like, basically whoever puts in more effort. And it's, like, it's so weird. Because, like, I get it. It's just strange to have a deity that's, like, supposedly so neutral on everything. And, like, some of the ways that this deity, saint, somewhere in between, and people call it differently, different ways. So, like, I'm trying to walk between those two. But, like, Santa Muerte stands as, like, just death. And that it has this thing of, like, she wants to be, like, intrigued by living and, like, the shenanigans of humans. And, like, the way it's described instantly was giving me Loki vibes where, like, chaos reigns. But also at the same time, it was, like, it's so reminiscent of hell where there's, like, life and death simultaneously. It's a circle, it's a cycle, all these things. And, like, it was really interesting. Now, one of the things for this book that I wanted to talk about is that this is a book that, like, I wish we had more like this on different deities as pagans, because this was so well written. The way you're introduced to this, again, deity, saint, somewhere in between, like, it is explained so well, because we get to have the whole story. We get to know the ancient connections, the why, but also it's not this constant of, like, having to validate yourself through old text that isn't even written down by the people. Like, you get that so much in pagan books, where if it's talking about a specific deity, you're constantly referencing the only sources we have. And, like, it gets old. And, like, this book doesn't do that. It just gives you the what you need to know of this particular deity. And, like, even when it connects it to other ones, it gives you just what you need to know. And it doesn't have to sit here constantly being like, for example, like, looking at, like, Norse things. It's like, well, in the Prose Edda, in stanza blah blah blah, it says this, and we can confirm it from Snorri with this. And it's like, I don't care. Like, the academic pagans will love it, and that's great. But not all of us are the academic pagans. And this book doesn't do that. It just tells you as is, and, like, kind of where, you know, historical things are connected, and, like, theories for it, and then how this saint slash deity is in the modern world, and then it jumps into how to work with this deity. And I wish there was more books like this. Like, the author did such a good job. I hope there will be more, even if it's not from this author, just others who take this stance where we don't have to sit and, like, go through trying to prove things from people that actually weren't part of the society. Like, it's good to know, and if you're more of an academic pagan, that's great. I'm not, and, like, I have a hard time with, like, putting all of our faith into dudes who wrote it down who aren't even aware of, like, the world. Like, the pagan world was gone by the time they were writing it down, and, like, obviously they're gonna sway things, whether it's their own personal bias or, like, societal pressure to change it. And, like, you know, it just puts on such a stand, like, the pedestal of things, where this book really didn't. And it didn't have to constantly reference these things. And it was a really nice, refreshing thing to not have. And so, like, I hope more books do that. But the other thing I want to mention is about the work with Santa Muerte. So in here, it tells you how to start working with Santa Muerte. So it tells you, like, she has, like, a rainbow association, and, like, each color has a different, like, purpose, which is fascinating. Because it's like, you know, like, I'm not, like, super, like, intelligent on all things, like, Mexican culture and, like, Aztec culture and things. And so, like, I didn't really know. And so, like, it's intriguing because, like, every once in a while, like, there's just, like, images you, like, kind of see and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then you move on with your life. And it's, like, the saint candles that are, like, everywhere. Any grocery store you go to, most metaphysical shops will have some. Like, they have Santa Muerte, and like apparently a lot of times they use the like rainbow edition of her so that it's like no matter which color you're wanting to work with, like it's all represented. And like it's so intriguing. And it was so cool to get to learn about like how, for example, like gold is associated with money. So it's like a gold or a yellow are her colors associated with money. If you want to call to her to help in that aspect, use that color. You don't use green. Green has a different meaning. And that, you know, like when you work with her, like how you set up your altar is like kind of pagan, kind of, I think, Catholic, somewhere between the two. And again, I don't know like next to anything about Catholicism. Like, you know, you got your general of Christian knowledge, but like every branch of it does things different. And like it's so interesting because like I don't know if that's like a thing, but like you have some like representation of Santa Muerte. It's like a statue, a picture, something, and then you have like a cup of water, and then you have like your rosary. And it's like, it was interesting to learn about because like you never, I don't know, I don't really hear a lot about that. And so it was like, it was just really cool. Like, it gave me the idea of like how to approach my altar a little differently because like I'd never thought of this, but maybe I should have. So one of the things is like you're supposed to take like your water offering or whatever, and like you could swap it out for like any liquid or whatever, but water's like the most common. And so like you use water, but like you dab it to the lips of your figure, and that like in a way Santa Muerte like literally inhabits whatever that representation is. And it's like, I had never thought of that. Like, it's intriguing, it's different. And like the ways you're supposed to like go about working with her, and how it's like, you know, one of the ways that you like repay her is like you go and you do your rosary like for 9 days or something. Every day you go to the altar. And it's like, that's an interesting way of like the kind of like exchange of, you know, what you want to have them do for you and you're going to do this for them. Like, it was interesting. You don't really see that a whole lot. And like, I'm sure a lot of that is Catholicism, or maybe it's like leftover like Aztec culture that just kind of is blended in. I don't know, but like it was really cool, and it gave me so many ideas of what to do. Now, will I ever actually work with Santa Muerte? Probably not. Like, it's really interesting, but like a little intimidating. And honestly, if I'm gonna work with a death deity, I'm probably gonna work with hell, or stick with my true and tried Morrigan and like delve into my relationship more with her. But like it, because it's somewhere in between Christian and Catholicism, and also like a culture that like I have no say in. Like, I have no ties that I'm aware of to anywhere, ancestry or otherwise, like nothing to Mexico. So like, and like Aztec culture and things, even Spain, like there's nothing for me. There's no connection, but I do have it to Ireland and the UK and like Germany and things like that, like the Norse culture and Irish culture. So like for me, it's just like I don't want to step on toes, but like, you know, if I wanted to, I could, but I feel like I don't necessarily need to work with this deity / saint. But it's one of those things that like, even if you don't work with the deity you look up, or again, saint, somewhere between the two, like it's just one of those things, like it's really interesting to read and then see what you can take and apply to your own life. Because like, I love this idea. It gave me so much inspiration to like reevaluate my relationship with my own deities and how I work with them. And it was a good book. It was a good read. Like, I was just wanting to savor reading through this, which to me is always a sign that it's a good book. If I fly through the pages, it's usually not as good. If it's like, I don't want it to end and I'm just like savoring it, even though it's not a long book, to me that usually means it's a good book. So anyways, I feel like this is just the most rambly review, but that's the thing with this book, is like I've kind of put it off talking about it for a while because I didn't know what to say. Like, I love this book. It was really interesting. Am I still a little intimidated to even think about working with this deity? Yup. Did some of it like totally ring true? Also yup. Because like one of the things was that Santa Muerte is very territorial. and is like, her altar space is hers. Her tools are hers. There is no mingling with other deities. Like, she has her own little spot. And I'm like, that definitely has been Morrigan a lot of times. Like, there are certain deities and things that I am allowed to, like, commingle with her, but, like, at the same time, usually she has her own space. And, like, when I had done other rituals where, like, you were going to call on the Morrigan with other deities at random, and especially with saints, it was a hard pass. She was not going to join. And so, like, it's always intriguing to find, like, other things in other cultures that, like, that happens. And so, like, I don't know. I don't know if the Morrigan is horribly connected to Santa Muerte or not. Honestly, again, I was feeling more like hell, but even then, not exactly, but kind of. Because, like, hell has so many different aspects to her, but so does Santa Muerte. Like, those two were, like, so close together. But yet the worship of her for Santa Muerte, I felt like would align more closely for me to the Morrigan and my relationship with her. So, like, this book was just, like, really fascinating. Because, like, Santa Muerte is, like, this very compassionate person, deity, saint thing. And yet, she also does work with, like, some really sketchy people who do really terrible things. Like, there's a lot of abuse and murder and things that she helps those people. And yet, like, she's also very compassionate and is there to help people. And, like, it's one of those things, like, when you look at her as, like, just, like, a stand-in archetype of death deities, it's really intriguing. How many of those would apply to other death deity cultures? Like, how many of the things associated with her would apply to, like, Hades? Or, I think it's Thanatos, that one? the Greek deity who actually, like, brings death and, like, takes you to Hades. And, like, you know, with Odin and Freya and Hel, like, how would that apply? And, like, the Morrigan, but also, like, Dawn, and, like, there's other death deities. And, like, how would this apply to, like, Osiris and Anubis? Like, how would these traits and, like, the view of death apply to other pantheons? And, like, especially in a modern context. It's really fascinating. And it, like, when you read through it and you try and look at it outside of just the little narrow scope of just her, it's really fascinating. So anyways, this video is just so rambly. So I'm sorry that we're just, like, going all over the place. That's why I haven't recorded this, because I have so many things to say, and at the same time it doesn't feel coherent, so we're just rolling with it today. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this one in the comments below. As always, make sure to check out my Patreon. It is linked down below. You can also find a link to my blog if you want to check out my books. Gonna try and get back to uploading every day now, and hopefully the voiceover situation here will be over soon. I'm hoping tomorrow, but might be the next day. We'll find out. I'm trying to get it done as quickly as possible. I just haven't decided where I'm going to record. Am I going to record in the new office space? Am I going to keep recording downstairs? I haven't decided yet. Only problem is, if I start recording up here with the fancy camera, I have to worry about Office Cat trying to knock it over. So, like, we'll keep it in mind. I'm going to try it out probably tomorrow and see how things go. But anyways, that is enough rambling for today. I would love to know your thoughts. Do you work with Santa Muerte? What are your thoughts on, like, all of the things from this video? I would love to hear in the comments down below. Till next time, thank you so much for watching, and blessed be. Oh, and thank you to my Patreon peeps. I forgot to call you out, I think, in the last few videos. But thank you to y'all. Your content will also be resuming soon, too, because I did fall behind on that as well. It's been chaos for the last, like, few weeks. So, anyways, I will see you all soon. Blessed be.